That's a nice outfit you got there. Heading to a costume party?
It's my uniform, officer. I'm an active duty senior chief in the United States Navy.
Right, and I'm the King of England. Step out of the vehicle, now.
The sun was relentless. A clean, white, unforgiving Tuesday morning sun hanging over Interstate 15 in Southern California. It beat down on the black asphalt, making the heat shimmer in waves. And it glinted off the gold. Gold buttons on a pristine white uniform jacket. Gold stripes on the sleeve of a senior chief petty officer. Gold on the trident pinned above a row of ribbons, the unmistakable mark of a United States Navy SEAL. That trident had been earned in the salt and sand of Coronado, proven in the mountains of Afghanistan and the waters of the Persian Gulf. Today, it was simply catching the light through the windshield of a Ford F-150, doing a steady 72 miles per hour. The man wearing it, Senior Chief David Sterling, 38 years old, was on his way to a fundraiser, a charity event for the families of fallen operators. He'd been in the Navy for 20 years, a SEAL for 16 of them. His file was thicker than a phone book and just as heavy with commendations. 2 bronze stars with Valor devices, a Purple Heart from a firefight outside Kandahar, more citations than he could remember the stories for. He was the quiet professional, the man you sent when failure wasn't an option. He commanded respect not by demanding it, but by earning it in places most people couldn't find on a map. This morning, he was just a man driving to honor his friends, wearing his service dress whites because the invitation requested it. He had 50 miles to go. He never made it. The flashing lights appeared in his rearview mirror with a sudden, jarring intensity. Red and blue strobing against the endless blue of the desert sky. Sterling's training kicked in before he even had a conscious thought. Check mirrors, signal, slow down, pull over to the shoulders smoothly and safely. He did it all by the book, the truck coming to a stop on the gravel shoulder with practiced ease. He put the truck in park, rolled down all 4 windows, and placed his hands on top of the steering wheel, palms up. It was the procedure taught in every safety briefing. Comply, de-escalate, don't give anyone a reason. He watched in his side mirror as the patrol car door opened. The officer who stepped out was young, maybe early 30s. He had a squared-away haircut and sunglasses that hid his eyes, but his movements were rigid, almost aggressive. He walked with a swagger that felt practiced. This was Officer Ben Carter, 32 years old, 5 years with the county sheriff's department. On paper, his record was average. No commendations, no major disciplinary actions. But what the paper didn't show was the chip on his shoulder. A failed attempt at Marine Corps officer candidate school 5 years ago, a washout that left a bitter taste he'd never quite shaken. He saw military bearing in others and mistook it for arrogance. He saw decorated uniforms and, in a dark corner of his mind, saw a costume. Carter stopped just behind Sterling's driver's side door, his hand resting on his sidearm. "You know why I pulled you over?" The question was sharp, accusatory. Sterling kept his eyes forward, his hands on the wheel. "No, sir, I do not." His voice was calm, respectful, the voice of a man used to giving and taking orders under extreme pressure. "You rolled through that last stop sign back at the on-ramp, barely even slowed down." Sterling knew he hadn't. He was meticulous. He was a creature of procedure and discipline. He stopped at stop signs. He checked his 6. It's what kept him alive. But he wasn't going to argue. That wasn't the mission. "I apologize, officer. I must have been mistaken." Carter didn't seem to hear the apology. His eyes were scanning the uniform, the ribbons on Sterling's chest, the silver star of a senior chief on his collar, the gold trident. His gaze lingered on the trident, a flicker of something, disbelief or maybe contempt, crossing his face. "That's a nice outfit you got there. Heading to a costume party?" The question hung in the dry desert air, thick and ugly. This wasn't about a stop sign. Sterling's internal alarm, the one honed by years of threat assessment, went from yellow to orange. "It's my uniform, officer. I'm an active duty senior chief in the United States Navy." "Right, and I'm the King of England," Carter scoffed. He gestured with his head. "License and registration." "Of course, sir. My wallet is in my left back pocket. My registration is in the glove box. How would you like me to proceed?" Sterling didn't move a muscle. He was giving the officer complete control of the situation. It was textbook de-escalation. "Let's see the license first, slowly." "Okay, sir." Sterling announced his movements before making them. "I am now slowly moving my right hand from the steering wheel and reaching for my back pocket." He moved with deliberate, measured slowness. He pulled out his wallet, opened it, and held it out the window. Carter took it without looking at the license. His eyes were still fixed on the uniform. "You got a military ID to go with that story?" "Yes, sir, it's in my wallet, right in front of my driver's license." Carter finally looked down. He pulled out the two cards, the California driver's license with David Sterling's picture and the Common Access Card, the CAC. Holographic seal, embedded RFID chip, photo, rank, branch of service. Federal property, nearly impossible to fake. Carter held it up, turning it over in the sun. He looked at the photo on the ID, then at the man in the truck. They were a perfect match. The proof was right there in his hand. Physical, undeniable proof. He handed the wallet back, but he kept the military ID. "These are pretty easy to fake these days. You can buy them online." Sterling's jaw tightened just slightly. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was a choice. Officer Carter was choosing to disbelieve the evidence in his own hands. "Sir, that is a federally issued active-duty military identification card. The number on that card can be verified in about 30 seconds. "I'll be the judge of that," Carter said, his voice flat. "Step out of the vehicle, now." An older man at a roadside fruit stand about 50 yards away, wearing a faded USMC retired cap, had stopped arranging his oranges. He was watching. He knew what a senior chief's dress whites looked like. He knew what a Navy SEAL's trident looked like. And he knew something was going very, very wrong. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew deep in your gut that an authority figure was completely in the wrong? Comment below. The command to exit the vehicle was a clear escalation. It moved the encounter from a simple traffic stop into a detention. Sterling knew the law. An officer needed reasonable suspicion that a crime had been committed to order someone out of their car for a minor infraction. A fabricated rolling stop didn't qualify. But again, training took over. Arguing on the side of a highway with an armed officer who was already hostile was a losing proposition. There was only one objective: survive the encounter. "Understood, sir." Sterling turned off the engine, removed the keys from the ignition, and placed them on the dashboard. He opened the door slowly and stepped out, keeping his hands visible at all times. The heat from the asphalt immediately radiated through the soles of his polished black shoes. He stood tall, his posture perfect, a habit drilled into him over 2 decades of service. He was 6'2", solid muscle, a physically imposing figure. But his demeanor was calm, non-threatening. Carter motioned for him to step to the rear of the truck. "Face away from me." Sterling complied, turning to face the endless stretch of desert highway. He could see the heat rising from the road, distorting the cars in the distance. He could hear the whoosh of traffic passing by, drivers craning their necks to see the spectacle. A Navy senior chief in his dress whites being treated like a common criminal. Behind him, Carter was on his radio. But he wasn't running the ID. He wasn't verifying Sterling's status. He was calling for backup. "Dispatch, I have one male, possible 1131, impersonating a military officer. I-15 northbound, mile marker 47. Need a second unit." The charge was stolen valor, a serious federal offense. An accusation Carter had conjured out of thin air, based on nothing but his own internal bias. Sterling could hear the disbelief in the dispatcher's voice. 10-4, can you confirm? Subject is in uniform? Affirmative, full dress whites, claiming to be a Navy SEAL. Carter's voice was laced with sarcasm. Looks like he bought it at a surplus store yesterday. Every word was a calculated insult. An attack not just on Sterling, but on the uniform he wore and the sacrifices it represented. Sterling remained silent, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He thought about the men he was supposed to meet, men who had lost brothers. He thought about the Gold Star families he was going to support. And he stood there, on the side of a highway, being accused of faking the very identity they had all bled for. The veteran from the fruit stand, a man named George Prentice, couldn't watch anymore. He was 75 years old, had served 2 tours in Vietnam with the 1st Marine Division. He knew uniforms. He knew bearing. He started walking slowly toward the scene, not wanting to startle the officer, but unable to remain silent. "Officer?" George called out, his voice raspy from age and sun. "Excuse me, officer?" Carter turned, annoyed by the interruption. "Stay back, sir. This is official police business." "I know it is, son," George said, stopping a respectful 20 feet away. "I just wanted to tell you, that's a real uniform. That's a senior chief petty officer. And that pin on his chest, the trident, you don't buy that in a store. You earn that with blood." Carter gave him a dismissive wave. "Thanks for your input, sir. Now step away before I charge you with obstruction." He turned his attention back to Sterling, his frustration now amplified. He felt challenged, his authority questioned by an old man. "So you're a SEAL, huh? Where'd you serve?" He started firing questions like a drill instructor. "What was your BUD/S class number? Who was your swim buddy? Name the 9-man squad you deployed with to Ramadi." These were questions designed to trip someone up, but Sterling wasn't someone. He answered every question without hesitation. "BUD/S class 234. My swim buddy was Petty Officer Kevin Daniels, KIA 2007. My squad in Ramadi was Echo Platoon, SEAL Team 3, Lieutenant Commander Rourke, Chief Warrant Officer Miller, Petty Officers." He named them all. Names of the living and the dead. Each name a piece of his history. His perfect recall, the cold, hard facts he delivered, didn't satisfy Carter. It infuriated him. In his mind, the story was too good, too polished. It confirmed his suspicion that it was all a rehearsed lie. The reality that this was simply a man reciting his own life was beyond Carter's grasp. "You got some official orders on you? Something to prove you are who you say you are?" Carter demanded. "Yes, sir, in my briefcase on the passenger seat. My official travel orders for TAD to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. They have my commanding officer's name and direct contact number on them." "How convenient," Carter sneered. "Stay right there, don't move." He walked to the passenger side of the truck, opened the door, and pulled out a black leather briefcase. He opened it on the hood of his patrol car. Inside, on top, was a manila folder. He pulled out the documents. There it was. Official Department of the Navy letterhead. Orders for SCPO David Sterling. The document detailed his temporary assignment, travel authorizations, and, at the bottom, the signature of his commanding officer at NAVSPEC Warcom, along with a 24-hour duty officer phone number. A direct line to the heart of naval special warfare. The proof was now overwhelming. A military ID, verifiable personal details, official written orders. Carter stared at the paper. For a moment it seemed like reality might finally penetrate his wall of suspicion. He looked at the paper, then back at Sterling's rigid form, then at the old Marine veteran watching him. He had a choice. He could make a phone call, end this in 30 seconds, and admit he was wrong. Or he could double down. He could choose his gut feeling over the mountain of evidence in front of him. He folded the orders, tucked them into his pocket, and pulled out his handcuffs. The choice was made. If you were the veteran watching this unfold, would you have intervened, or would you have stayed quiet? Let us know, yes or no. The sound of the handcuffs opening was a sharp metallic click in the dry air. It was a sound that Sterling had heard before, but always from the other side. He had placed restraints on captured insurgents, on pirates in the Indian Ocean. Never, in his most unimaginable nightmares, did he think he would be the one hearing that sound on American soil while wearing his dress uniform. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Carter commanded, his voice now filled with a triumphant certainty. He had committed to his course of action, and any doubt was now buried under a layer of aggressive authority. Sterling took a slow breath, the air hot and dusty. "Officer, you have my military ID. You have my official orders. You have a direct phone number to my command. I am urging you to use it. You are making a serious mistake." His voice was still calm, but there was a new edge to it, a warning. Not a threat, but the cold, factual statement of a man who understands chain of command, rules of engagement, and consequences. "The only mistake here was you thinking you could get away with this," Carter retorted. He grabbed Sterling's arm, twisting it behind his back with more force than was necessary. Sterling didn't resist. He allowed his arms to be pulled back, his posture remaining straight. Resisting would only escalate the situation and validate the officer's false narrative. He had to trust that the system, the one he had sworn to defend, would eventually sort this out. But at this moment, the system was failing him spectacularly. The first handcuff closed around his right wrist. The cold steel felt alien against his skin. Then the second, cinching tight, the metal teeth locking into place. The cuffs were tight, biting into his wrists. Carter did a final check, pushing Sterling forward slightly. The pristine white uniform, a symbol of honor and naval tradition, was now restrained by the tools of criminal detention. The ribbons on his chest, representing valor, sacrifice, and service, were just inches away from the cold steel of the handcuffs. The old Marine, George, let out an audible, "Oh, for God's sake!" He took a step forward, then stopped himself, knowing it was useless. He just shook his head, his face a mask of disgust and sorrow. He had seen young men in uniform treated with disrespect before, but this was different. This was a perversion of everything he believed in. Carter began his pat-down, his hands running roughly over the uniform. He pulled Sterling's wallet out again, his deployment orders, his keys. He laid them out on the hood of his cruiser like trophies. Then he began to read the charges, his voice loud enough for the passing cars to hear, as if performing for an audience. "You are under arrest for impersonating a military officer, a violation of United States Code Title 18, Section 912. You are also being charged with failure to obey a lawful order and resisting arrest." "I did not resist, officer," Sterling stated, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I have complied with every single one of your orders, even the unlawful ones." "You can tell it to the judge," Carter said, the classic line of an officer who has run out of justifications. He grabbed Sterling by the arm and began walking him toward his patrol car. Each step was a humiliation, the starched white pants brushing against the dusty, gritty shoulder of the road, the polished shoes scuffing on the gravel. He was a senior chief in the Navy, a warrior who had walked through fire for his country, and he was being paraded like a common thief in front of the world. As they reached the rear door of the patrol car, Sterling saw Carter's dash cam through the front windshield. A small, black, unblinking eye. It had been recording everything, the audio, the video, every word, every action. That camera was now his best witness. It had captured Carter's aggression, Sterling's compliance, the presentation of the ID, the discussion of the orders. It had recorded the truth. A small sliver of hope cut through the anger and humiliation. The evidence was there. It was just a matter of who would see it. Carter pushed his head down, a gesture of dominance, and guided him into the back seat. The space was cramped, the plastic seat hard and uncomfortable. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing the finality of the act. Sterling was now a prisoner in a county sheriff's vehicle. The heat inside the car was stifling. Through the cage partition, he could see Officer Carter picking up his military ID from the hood of the car, looking at it one last time before getting in. The phone number to Nav SpecWarCom was right there, staring him in the face. A 5-minute call was all it would take to end this. Carter got in, put the car in drive, and pulled away from the curb, leaving Sterling's F-150 abandoned on the shoulder of the highway. He didn't make the call. For the first time, Sterling felt a surge of pure, cold rage. It was an emotion he was well acquainted with, one he had learned to channel and control on the battlefield. Here, trapped in the back of a patrol car, it was useless. All he could do was breathe. In for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4. The tactical breathing he had taught to countless young operators to control fear and stress. He did it now to control his own fury. This incident would end, and when it did, there would be a reckoning. He was sure of it. Type honor in the comments if you believe the uniform should always be respected until proven otherwise. The 20-minute drive to the county sheriff's station was silent. Carter didn't speak, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at his prisoner. Sterling sat perfectly still, his cuffed hands resting in his lap, his gaze fixed out the window at the passing landscape. He was processing, analyzing, planning. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a steely resolve. The situation was no longer an encounter. It was a mission. His objective was now to observe, document, and survive the institutional bureaucracy until he could make contact with his command. They pulled into the station, a low, tan brick building with a tall radio antenna and an American flag flying out front. Carter parked in a designated spot and led Sterling out of the car and toward the main entrance. As they walked across the parking lot, several deputies and administrative staff who were outside on a break stopped and stared. They saw the uniform first, the brilliant, unmistakable dress whites. Then they saw the man wearing it, his back ramrod straight. Then they saw the handcuffs. The whispers started before they even reached the door. Something was wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. You don't put a senior chief in cuffs unless you are absolutely certain. The moment they stepped through the glass doors into the main booking area, the air in the room changed. The normal chatter of a precinct office died down. Every head turned. The officer at the booking desk looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief. And behind a glass-walled office, a man stood up from his desk, his face hardening into a granite mask of controlled fury. This was Police Chief Robert Miller, 58 years old, 30 years in law enforcement. And before that, 10 years in the United States Marine Corps, retiring as a colonel after serving in Desert Storm and Somalia. He knew leadership, he knew chain of command, and more than anything, he knew a military uniform and the man who earns the right to wear it. Chief Miller walked out of his office, his presence immediately commanding the attention of the entire room. He was a big man, not with fat, but with the solid density of an old weightlifter. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, were locked on Sterling. He took in the entire scene in a fraction of a second. The dress whites, the senior chief insignia, the sealed trident, the rows of ribbons signifying a career spent in harm's way, and the handcuffs. His gaze shifted from the cuffs to Officer Carter, and his voice was low and dangerous. "Carter, what is this?" It wasn't a question. It was a demand for an explanation. Carter, who had walked in with a swagger, suddenly looked like a teenager caught joyriding in his father's car. "Chief, I apprehended this individual on I-15. He was impersonating a naval officer. Stolen valor." Miller's eyes narrowed. He walked right up to Sterling, completely ignoring Carter. He didn't address Sterling. He addressed the uniform. His eyes scanned the ribbons, his brain instantly decoding the language of military achievement. Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with a V for valor. He saw campaign ribbons for Iraq and Afghanistan. He saw a Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal. He saw the Purple Heart. His eyes finally rested on the Special Warfare insignia, the Trident. He knew that fewer than 1% of all Navy personnel ever qualify to wear that pin. He turned his head slowly, his gaze finally falling on Carter. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "He was impersonating a naval officer," Miller repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. "And what evidence did you have to support that conclusion, officer?" His story was too perfect, Chief. He had an answer for everything. "I suspected he was a fake. He had a fake ID and fake orders," Carter stammered, his confidence evaporating under Miller's intense scrutiny. "You have his ID and orders?" Miller's voice was dangerously calm. "Yes, Chief, right here." Carter fumbled in his pocket and produced Sterling's military CAC and the folded travel orders. He held them out. Miller snatched them from his hand. He looked at the CAC first, holding it up to the light, seeing the security features he knew well from his own time in the service. Then he unfolded the orders. He read the letterhead, Naval Special Warfare Command. He read the name, SCPO David Sterling. He saw the signature of the commanding officer. He looked up at Sterling, and for the first time he spoke to him directly, his voice changing from one of command to one of profound respect. Senior Chief, I am Chief Robert Miller. I apologize for the actions of my officer. We are going to get this sorted out immediately. He turned to the booking sergeant. Get these handcuffs off this man now. The sergeant, who had been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes, practically jumped to get his keys. As the cuffs were removed, Sterling rubbed his wrists, the red marks standing out starkly against his skin. Miller turned back to Carter, who was now pale, visibly sweating. You told me you suspected his ID and his orders were fake. Did you make any attempt to verify them? Did you call the number for his command that is printed right here on this document? Carter's silence was his answer. He stared at the floor, unable to meet his chief's gaze. No, Miller said, his voice a low growl. You didn't. You stood on the side of a public highway and you put handcuffs on a decorated American war hero based on your gut. Your gut was wrong. He took a step closer, lowering his voice so only Carter could hear. You have created an incident of such catastrophic stupidity that I can't even begin to fathom the consequences. Go to my office, sit down, and do not speak to anyone until I tell you to. Carter, utterly defeated, turned and walked toward the chief's office. Miller watched him go before turning back to Sterling. Senior Chief, please come into my office. Let me get you something to drink. I need to make a phone call. The phone call he was about to make wasn't to the number on the orders. His call, as a matter of professional courtesy and damage control, was going to be to the base commander at Naval Base Coronado. He had no idea that in a few minutes his phone was going to ring with a call coming from a number he would never have expected. Chief Miller led Sterling into his office, a space filled with plaques, challenge coins, and framed photos, a visual history of a life dedicated to service, both military and civilian. A large Marine Corps flag stood in one corner, the eagle, globe, and anchor a silent testament to his past. He closed the door, leaving Officer Carter to stand awkwardly in the main bullpen, feeling the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on him. Please have a seat, Senior Chief, Miller said, gesturing to a chair. He rounded his desk and picked up the phone, his face grim. I am so profoundly sorry for this. There's no excuse. You didn't put the cuffs on me, Chief, Sterling replied, his voice even. Your officer did. Miller nodded, accepting the distinction. And I am responsible for him. I'm going to call the duty officer at Coronado and let them know what's happened. We'll get your truck towed here, and I will personally drive you wherever you need to go. He started to dial the number for the naval base, but before he could finish, the private line on his desk, the one that bypassed his secretary, began to ring. It was a number he didn't recognize, with a Washington, D.C. area code. He paused, a sense of foreboding washing over him. He answered it. This is Chief Miller. The voice on the other end was calm, cold, and carried an authority that was absolute. Chief Miller, this is Rear Admiral John Kincaid, Commander Naval Special Warfare Command, calling from the Pentagon. Am I to understand that you currently have Senior Chief Petty Officer David Sterling in your custody? Miller froze. His blood ran cold. This wasn't a call from a base duty officer in California. This was a two-star admiral. This was the head of the entire SEAL community. The call wasn't just coming from the top of the Navy's most elite branch, it was coming from inside the Pentagon itself. The news had traveled from the side of a highway in California to the highest echelons of the U.S. military in less than an hour. How? Sterling hadn't made a call. Miller realized with a jolt, the veteran at the fruit stand, or one of the dozens of drivers who had passed by, their cell phone cameras recording. The world moved at the speed of light now. Admiral, Miller said, his voice suddenly hoarse. He stood up straighter, as if the Admiral could see him through the phone. Yes, sir, he is here in my office. He is safe. There has been a grave misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Chief? The Admiral's voice was like ice. My understanding is that one of the most decorated operators in my command was pulled from his vehicle, accused of impersonating a sailor, and placed in handcuffs by one of your officers, despite providing a valid military ID and official travel orders. Is that an accurate summary of this misunderstanding? Yes, Admiral, that is, regrettably, accurate. There was no way to spin this, no way to soften it. The facts were brutal. I am not interested in apologies at this moment, Chief. I am interested in solutions. First, you will immediately return all of Senior Chief Sterling's personal property. Second, you will provide him with an official police escort to his destination at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. Third, you will place the officer responsible, one Benjamin Carter, on administrative leave, effective immediately. He is not to have any contact with Senior Chief Sterling. His badge and weapon are to be confiscated pending a full investigation. Am I making myself clear? It wasn't a request. It was a direct order from a level of command that superseded local law enforcement in a way that was both breathtaking and terrifying. This was no longer a county issue. It was a federal issue, a military issue. Miller, the former Marine colonel, understood the language of command perfectly. Crystal clear, Admiral. Good. Now, I want you to hand the phone to Senior Chief Sterling. Miller held the phone out to Sterling. It's for you. Sterling took the phone. Senior Chief Sterling here, sir. He listened for a moment, his expression unreadable. Yes, sir. Understood, sir. No, sir, I am unharmed. Yes, sir, I will. He handed the phone back to Miller. Chief, Sterling said, his voice firm, the Admiral has instructed me to inform you that a liaison from the Judge Advocate General's office and 2 agents from the FBI's San Diego field office are en route to your station. They are to be given full and unrestricted access to all evidence pertaining to this incident, including Officer Carter's body camera footage, all dash cam recordings, and his complete personnel file. They will be here within 90 minutes. The 1-2 punch left Miller speechless. JAG, the FBI. A local traffic stop had metastasized into a multi-agency federal investigation in the span of a single phone call. The entire weight of the United States government was about to descend on his small-town precinct. The career of Officer Ben Carter was over. The only question now was whether Miller's own career would survive the fallout. The mistake wasn't just Carter's anymore. It was the department's. And the scandal was about to become national news. Miller looked through the glass wall of his office at Carter, who was now pacing nervously. He had no idea what was coming. He had picked a fight with a lone man in a white uniform. He was about to find out he had actually picked a fight with the entire United States Navy. Has a small mistake you've made ever spiraled into something much, much bigger? Share your story in the comments. This is a moment of truth that defines careers. And for Officer Carter, the end was just beginning. While Chief Miller was reeling from the Pentagon's direct intervention, a second parallel storm was gathering force. The dash cam from Officer Carter's patrol car was not the only camera that had recorded the incident. At least 3 drivers who passed the scene had recorded the arrest on their cell phones. One of them, a college student on his way home for the weekend, uploaded his 90-second clip to Twitter with a simple caption, "Sheriff's deputy arresting a Navy SEAL in his dress whites on the side of I-15. This looks wrong." He tagged a few national news outlets and hit post. The video was explosive. The image was stark and undeniable. A man in a uniform symbolic of heroism, hands cuffed behind his back, being pushed into a police car. It was visual dynamite. Within 1 hour, it had 100,000 views. Within 3 hours, it was trending in California. The original video was retweeted by several prominent veterans advocacy groups. Within 6 hours, it broke containment. CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC were all showing the clip on a loop. The phrase, "Navy SEAL arrested," became the #1 trending topic in the United States. By the time the FBI agents were pulling into the station's parking lot, the video had been viewed over 7 million times across multiple platforms. The court of public opinion was in session, and it had reached a verdict long before any legal proceedings had begun. The arrival of the FBI was quiet and professional, which made it all the more intimidating. A black Chevrolet Tahoe and a gray Ford sedan pulled into the visitor spots. 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in dark, conservative suits, stepped out. They moved with an efficiency that made it clear they were not there to negotiate. The lead agent, a tall man with graying temples, walked into the precinct and showed his credentials to the desk sergeant. "Special Agent Thorne, FBI. We're here to see Chief Miller. He's expecting us." Miller met them in the lobby. The agents' faces were unreadable, their professionalism a stark contrast to the barely controlled chaos that was now consuming his department. The phones were ringing off the hook. Local news, national news, outraged citizens. "Chief Miller," Agent Thorne said, shaking his hand firmly, "we've been tasked by the Department of Justice to take lead on the investigation into the unlawful detention of Senior Chief Petty Officer David Sterling." He handed Miller a folder containing a federal warrant. "This gives us the authority to collect all evidence related to the incident. We will need Officer Carter's patrol vehicle, specifically the dash cam and its data card. We will need his body camera. We will also need his service weapon, his badge, and his complete unredacted personnel and disciplinary file. Now!" The JAG liaison, a sharp Navy lieutenant commander in her service khakis, stood beside him. "Chief," she said, her tone businesslike, "I am here on behalf of the Department of the Navy to ensure the welfare of our service member and to act as a legal observer in this matter. We will be conducting our own parallel investigation." The full weight of the situation was now physically present in his precinct. Miller simply nodded. There was nothing else to do. He led them to the evidence locker and personally handed over Carter's equipment. He then walked them to his office where another agent was already taking a formal statement from a still shocked Sterling. While one agent began downloading the dashcam footage, Agent Thorne and the JAG officer sat down with Miller to review Carter's file. It was exactly as Miller had feared. On the surface, it was clean, but digging deeper, they found the pattern. 3 formal complaints in 5 years. Each one had been investigated and dismissed with an internal finding of unfounded. Each one involved a traffic stop that had escalated unnecessarily, and in each case, the citizen was a young man in a nice car, someone Carter had profiled as not belonging. One was a young black entrepreneur, another a Hispanic doctor, now a Navy SEAL. The pattern wasn't just about traffic stops. It was about Carter's inability to accept that certain people could hold positions of success or authority. His insecurities had become a public menace. "This wasn't just a mistake, Chief," Agent Thorne said, closing the file. "This was a pattern of behavior waiting for the right catalyst to become a federal case. Today was that day." As he spoke, the other agent called him over to the laptop. He had the dashcam footage loaded. The video was crystal clear, the audio sharp. They watched the entire 18-minute encounter unfold without commentary. They saw Sterling's calm compliance. They heard Carter's escalating aggression. They saw Sterling present his military ID. They heard Carter dismiss it as a fake. They saw Sterling offer up his official orders. They watched Carter ignore them and pull out his handcuffs. The video was damning. It was irrefutable. It was the prosecution's entire case on a single memory card. The JAG officer watched, her jaw tight with anger. He had every opportunity to de-escalate. He had positive identification, official documentation, and a direct line to verify. He chose to arrest him anyway. This is a clear violation of U.S. Code Title 18, Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law. Thorne nodded. "And that's just the start." He turned to Miller. "Where is Officer Carter now?" "In the break room. I had him write his official report," Miller said, already knowing the report would be a work of fiction designed to justify his actions. "Good," Thorne said. "We'd like to have a conversation with him." The investigation was moving faster than any case Miller had ever seen. The federal government, spurred by the viral video and the immense political pressure from the Pentagon, was treating this not as a minor police misconduct case, but as an assault on the institution of the military itself. Ben Carter had thought he was arresting a man. He was about to be indicted by a nation. 4 months later, the case of the United States of America versus Benjamin Carter began in a federal courthouse in San Diego. The speed at which the case came to trial was a testament to the immense pressure being exerted from Washington. This was not going to be a case buried in paperwork. This was going to be a public lesson. The courtroom was packed. The media filled 3 rows. Another 4 rows were taken up by men and women in uniform: Navy, Marine Corps, Army, and Air Force. They were there in solidarity, a silent, powerful jury of Sterling's peers. Senior Chief Sterling himself sat in the front row with the prosecution team. He was in his dress whites again, the uniform immaculate, his posture unshakable. He was not there as a victim, but as a witness for the nation. Carter sat at the defense table, looking smaller and paler than he had on the highway. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender, had an impossible task. His entire defense strategy rested on a single, flimsy pillar: that Officer Carter's suspicion was reasonable and that he was acting in good faith to investigate a potential case of stolen valor. The prosecution, led by a sharp assistant U.S. attorney named Maria Flores, dismantled that pillar brick by brick. Her first exhibit was the dashcam video. She played the entire unedited recording for the jury. For 18 minutes, the courtroom was silent, captivated by the drama unfolding on the large screens. The jurors saw every moment: Carter's aggressive tone, Sterling's calm compliance, the clear view of the military ID, the offer to verify the orders. They saw the handcuffs click shut. The video ended, and the silence in the courtroom was deafening. Flores called her first witness, Senior Chief David Sterling. He walked to the stand, took the oath, and recounted the events of that day in a calm, factual, and utterly devastating narrative. He did not embellish. He did not display anger. He simply stated the facts. Carter's lawyer tried to cross-examine him. "Senior Chief, isn't it true that impersonating a military officer is a serious crime?" "Yes, it is." "And wouldn't you agree that a diligent police officer has a duty to investigate that crime?" "A diligent officer also has a duty to evaluate evidence." "But in the moment, with things escalating, couldn't your calm demeanor, your perfect answers, have been perceived as rehearsed?" Sterling paused for a beat, his eyes locking with the lawyer's. "Sir, my entire career has been about performing under pressure. My calm is not rehearsed. It is trained. There is a significant difference." The defense lawyer had no further questions. Next, the prosecution called a Navy Master Chief Petty Officer, a uniform expert with 30 years of service. He walked the jury through every single detail of Sterling's uniform: the precise placement of the ribbons according to naval regulations, the meaning of each device, the specific insignia of a SEAL. He concluded his testimony with a simple, powerful statement: "This uniform is not a costume. It is a biography. It tells the story of a 20-year career of service and sacrifice. No imposter could ever get these details right. It is, in my expert opinion, impossible." The prosecution's final key witness was Chief Robert Miller. In an extraordinary move, a sitting police chief took the stand to testify against one of his own former officers. Miller recounted the events at the station, his voice filled with a mixture of professional regret and personal anger. Flores asked him, "Chief Miller, in your 30 years of law enforcement experience, what is the standard procedure when an officer is presented with official identification they believe may be fraudulent?" Miller's answer was unequivocal. "The procedure is to verify. You use the tools available to you. You make a phone call. You run the information through the proper channels. You do not, under any circumstances, make an arrest based on a gut feeling when verifiable evidence is in your hand." "And did Officer Carter follow that procedure?" "No," Miller said, his gaze shifting to Carter. "He did not. He acted recklessly, unprofessionally, and he dishonored our badge." The defense had no response. They could not refute the video. They could not refute the experts. They could not refute the testimony of Carter's own chief. Their case crumbled. When Ben Carter was called to the stand, he repeated his story that he thought the uniform looked too clean, and that Sterling's story was too good to be true. On cross-examination, Flores simply asked, "So your personal opinion was more important than the federal ID, the official orders, and the direct phone number to a military command?" Carter had no answer. The jury was out for less than an hour. The foreman, a woman in her 50s, handed the verdict to the clerk. She couldn't look at the defense table. The clerk's voice rang out in the silent courtroom. "On the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law, we, the jury, find the defendant, Benjamin Carter, guilty." The word echoed. "On the charge of false imprisonment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of official misconduct, we find the defendant guilty." Ben Carter sat motionless, his face ashen. He had been so sure of his authority, so certain of his own judgment. And in the space of an afternoon, a jury of his peers had stripped it all away, leaving him with nothing but the consequences of a single, terrible decision made on a sun-drenched highway. The sentencing hearing took place 2 weeks later. The courtroom was just as full. Benjamin Carter stood before the federal judge, a woman known for her stern demeanor and her history as a former prosecutor. She had listened to the entire trial without expression. Now she spoke, and her words carried the full weight of the law. "Mr. Carter," she began, her eyes fixed on him, "you took an oath to uphold the law, but on that day you did not uphold the law. You became a law unto yourself. You were presented with overwhelming evidence of a man's identity, a man who, I must add, has served this country with more distinction than most of us could ever imagine. You ignored this evidence. You chose to trust your own uninformed prejudice instead." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "You did not just arrest a man. You arrested a symbol. You put handcuffs on a uniform that represents the highest ideals of this nation. In doing so, you did more than violate Mr. Sterling's civil rights. You eroded the very trust between the community and the law enforcement officers sworn to protect it. This was not a mistake. It was a willful abuse of power." Her final words were delivered like the fall of a gavel. "For these crimes, this court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison. There will be no possibility of parole." A quiet gasp went through the courtroom. 15 years. It was a sentence far harsher than anyone expected. It was a message. Ben Carter was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, his short, disastrous career in law enforcement officially over. David Sterling watched him go, his expression unchanged. There was no joy, no triumph, only a grim sense of finality. The story didn't end there. Sterling filed a civil lawsuit against the county, not for personal enrichment, but to force institutional change. The county, facing indefensible evidence and immense public pressure, settled for a record $12.5 million. The first thing Sterling did was announce the formation of a new foundation, funded entirely by the settlement, dedicated to providing legal aid to veterans and service members who have been victims of civil rights violations. "I had the support of the U.S. Navy," he said in a press conference. "This foundation is for the ones who don't." His case became a catalyst. Spurred by veterans groups and a bipartisan coalition in Congress, a new piece of legislation was drafted, the Service Member Protection Act, informally known as the Sterling Act. The law mandated new nationwide training protocols for law enforcement on how to properly verify military status and made it a specific federal offense to unlawfully detain or arrest an individual in uniform without first attempting verification through official channels. The dashcam footage of Sterling's arrest became required viewing in police academies across the country, a textbook example of what not to do. Today, David Sterling has been promoted to Master Chief Petty Officer, the highest enlisted rank in the Navy. He continues to serve, now as a senior instructor, shaping the next generation of SEALs. Chief Robert Miller retired a year after the incident, credited with handling a catastrophic situation with integrity, but the scandal had taken its toll. He now works as a consultant, helping police departments implement de-escalation and anti-bias training. Ben Carter is 4 years into his 15-year sentence at a medium-security federal correctional institution. And so, a story that began with a baseless accusation on a hot stretch of highway ended with a new federal law, a disgraced officer behind bars, and a hero who turned his humiliation into a force for good. What drives a man like Ben Carter to make such a disastrous decision? The easy answer is prejudice, but the psychology is deeper, more complex. It's often rooted in a profound sense of personal failure and inadequacy. Carter failed to become a Marine officer. In his mind, he was denied entry into an elite club, a brotherhood of warriors. When he saw Senior Chief Sterling, a member of the most elite unit of all, he didn't just see a man, he saw a living embodiment of his own failure. The pristine uniform, the perfect posture, the trident, it all represented the success he could never achieve. His actions weren't born from a desire to uphold the law. They were born from a subconscious need to tear down a symbol that reminded him of what he wasn't. It was an act of pathetic, self-destructive envy, masked as professional diligence. How could Sterling have protected himself better? In truth, he did everything right. His tactical training, comply, de-escalate, survive, was perfectly executed. If we imagine a different scenario, one where Sterling argued, resisted, or let his anger show, the outcome could have been tragically different. Carter, feeling his authority challenged, might have escalated to physical violence. The resulting narrative could have been twisted. Combative suspect resists arrest. The lesson here is chilling. Sometimes, even when you do everything perfectly, the system can still fail you. Sterling's salvation wasn't just his training, it was his status. It was the fact he was a SEAL, that a rear admiral was a phone call away, that the institution he belonged to had the power to move mountains. The real lesson of this story isn't that the system worked. The system only worked because the victim was an exceptional man with exceptional resources. It worked because there was flawless video evidence and the backing of the Pentagon. The truly terrifying question is what happens to the average citizen who doesn't have a 2-star admiral on speed dial? How many Ben Carters are out there, wielding badges and insecurities, pulling people over and letting their personal demons make decisions? Accountability should not be a lottery ticket won only by the well-connected or the perfectly documented. It must be an automatic, unwavering function of a just society. This story reminds us that honor is not woven into the fabric of a uniform, but into the character of the person who wears it, whether that uniform is blue, white, or civilian clothes. The respect we give should be earned through action, not demanded by a badge. I have a couple of questions for you all, and I truly want to know what you think. Has a person's uniform or appearance ever made you judge them, for better or for worse, before you knew their story? And what do you think is the single most important change needed to ensure accountability is the rule, not the exception? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters in this conversation. And if stories like this are important to you, please subscribe and share. We have to keep watching.